Good evening, everyone. Would everyone rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is this evening's Monroe Town Council meeting, Monday, December 16th, 2019, 8 p.m. Roll call. We have all members of council present with the exception of the vacancy that was created by Chairman Leto's resignation last week. So we do have one important piece of business that we have to proceed with before assuming the rest of the meeting, and that is to select a new chairman. So I'd like to make a motion to accept nominations for town council chair.
Second.
Do we have any nominations? Second by Mr. Bauer. Do we have any nominations?
Mr. Vice Chair, I move to nominate Enid LaPellis as Chairman of Town Council, Chairwoman, Madam Chair.
Second.
Second by Ms. Aguilar. Do we have any other nominations for chair? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations, this passes unanimously. Thank you, Enid. Maybe before Enid assumes the chair, just wanted to pass along heartfelt appreciation, gratitude, and just general good feelings about the tremendous amount of work that Frank had accomplished on this dais for a number of years. It's going to be sorely missed. Hopefully, we'll be able to carry on without Frank, in a proper manner. Frank, thank you. So, without further ado, I think we have. Oh, excuse me, Mrs. Martin.
Yeah, I would just like to speak, hopefully for our side of the aisle, and that I've worked with Mr. Leto for a number of years, and generally it's been cordial. Always it's been instructive, and adding again to our appreciation for all your work. You're welcome.
And I'd like to say, I hope I do 90% of the job that Frank has done. It's excellent chair.
With that said,
We do too.
Okay, sorry.
Now, does my pay go up as chair as opposed to vice chair? Is Mr. Keller, did my pay go up?
10 times.
Doubles, great.
Anything multiplied by zero?
With that said, what? I'm sorry.
You're gonna
I
switch
gotta
some names,
switch
please?
chairs here.
All right. Oh, I get to sit next to Enid? Oh,
Keep your hands on the table, please.
Oh, boy.
I meant while I was putting my chair
oh,
down.
see what we're in for next time?
My last comment ever.
When you get the consent, I'll do
Okay. All right.
that. Okay.
First order of business is the consent calendar. Any comment on the?
Madam Chairman?
Yes. I'm just waiting for Sean to sit down so I can see it. Okay.
Will you have an election of the vice chairman this evening?
No, because that was done last time. Sean
He
is,
is
the-
vice chair.
Sean is the
I
vice
still hold
chair.
up to vice chair.
Oh, okay, we'll go to you.
Okay,
Say
so,
that song?
It's in writing, or?
okay, let's get rid of the frivolity. All right, back to consent calendar. Any comment on the consent calendar? Mr. Mauer?
I would move to remove item C from the consent calendar and move it to new business for discussion.
Okay, do you need a motion for that?
Hold on.
I'll second
You
it.
would have to make a motion.
Okay, so that's a motion?
Yes.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Mrs. Martin seconding it. Any discussion? Or wait till the new business, that'd be better?
I feel that this item does require some discussion due to certain charter concerns. As such, I feel that it needs to be discussed in new business and not just passed as part of the consent calendar.
Okay, so do I need a vote on this?
Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, any other discussion on this? So by consensus, I'm putting this under new business. Is that okay? All right. So I think it's going to be, well, if we make it J, I know the selectman has something, he'll be K then. So we'll make this J.
Yeah.
Okay? So I'm going to call J, Legal Services Agreement for Town Attorney. Is that okay, Mr. Mara?
That is fine.
Okay. Legal Services Agreement for Town Attorney. Okay? So we're going on from that on to,
Yes, any other issues, right?
yeah, well, the rest of the calendar's fine, the consent calendar's fine. Correct? Okay, by consensus? All right.
Madam Chair, can I?
Yes.
I'd like to see if we can amend the agenda tonight to hold an executive session on pending litigation
Okay.
prior to new business, or prior to action items.
Okay. So do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Formachala. All righty. Vote, all in favor? Passes 8-0. Anybody against? Everyone's hands up. 8-0. Okay, so you'll just remind me when
Yes.
you're on. Okay. All righty, going on. Communications, I'm incorporating into the agenda A through N on the communications. Okay. Going on to public participation. Anybody wish to participate? Mr. Lido, I believe it's Mr. Lido. I could see.
Good evening, Frank Lido, 528 Moose Hill Road, in Monroe. I just wanted to, my voice is breaking up already. I just wanted to thank all of my fellow members of council for their kind words this evening. I didn't expect that. I just wanted to, I think I've spoken to almost all of you prior to this evening, but I just formally thought it would be appropriate to tell you how much I enjoyed serving with each and every one of you. I've been doing this a while now, and I've been through many reiterations of council, and with no disrespect to any former members of council, I truly believe that the citizens of this town did the right thing in re-electing each and every member of you, all of us, when we were there. We have shown, we had shown that we worked very well together, and I would venture to say that, sorry, getting over a cold, that if you were sitting in the audience watching this council, if you couldn't figure out that the Republicans were sitting on the right or to your left facing and Democrats on the right, you wouldn't know the political party of any one of you. You know, every one of you always did the right thing for the town, put the town first. I know that's the respective pledges that we both take before we're appointed or even seek appointment to office from both parties. And I just think it's a really great thing. I oftentimes tell people other towns are very ideologically or partisan, they're very separate. And I tell people, they sometimes will say to me, you know, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you've been chair and you're doing this in Monroe and all these things. They really don't know about Monroe. And I say, you know, Monroe is a town where people do things. We have great volunteers and we do things for the best interest of the town of Monroe. And if you came to a council meeting, you wouldn't know who a Democrat or Republican is. Very rarely would you be able to figure that out. So I just want to thank you for that. I think it's humbling. I think you're all doing a great thing for the town. I think we're extremely underappreciated. I know you're underappreciated, as you can see from the many members. Oh, we have a lot of people here this evening, actually. Shock. My back's to you. I apologize. But I just want to thank you all personally for your service, not only to the town. I'm a citizen as well, but as someone who was your chair, you allowed me to run the meetings seamlessly, efficiently. We got things done, and generally in full agreement and support. So I truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Difficult for me. This was a difficult decision for me. I really enjoyed being up there, but I want to thank Mr. Kellogg for giving me the opportunity to kind of turn my hat a little sideways. I would say wear a new hat, but I really don't feel like it's wearing a new hat. I think it's just turning it a little bit. And I'm still here now in a different role, proud to serve all of you, proud to serve everybody in this town, and a little bit different way to protect and defend each and every one of you, your actions, and make sure that we continue to move this town forward. So again, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank each and every one of you. It was truly a pleasure. We have wonderful, wonderful, wonderful town council. I'm confident that that freight train will keep moving without me, and I will be here every night to make sure that you do.
Thank you.
So thank you.
As usual.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to publicly participate? Seeing no one, I'm going on to appointments.
Okay, we're gonna do
Oh, would you, okay. Well, you want action items, so that's not.
it was before appointments, but we could do whatever you want.
Okay, well, let's do the action item, the appointments real quick.
Sounds
Mrs. Martin, A. Sarah Harris. I assume
Yes.
you're doing it.
I am doing that. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would ask this council to approve the appointment of Sarah Harris, Democrat of 26 Friedman Lane, to the Zoning Board of Appeals with the term ending November 30th, 2024. Sarah Harris is the Operation Director for the town of Westport. She's responsible for working with the department heads and managing special projects to improve the efficiency of town operations, including land use, budgeting, economic development, and technology enhancement. Originally from Connecticut, she's a 3-year resident of Monroe and a mother of a 2- and a 4-year-old. Before returning to Connecticut, she was a managing analyst for the City of New York Mayor's Office of Management and Budget. Ms. Harris holds a dual bachelor's degree from Fordham University in Political Science and Urban Studies and a master's degree from the New School University in Policy Analysis and Management. She served for the previous 6 months on the Zoning Board of Appeals as an alternate. I ask that you place the approval of this appointment on the agenda, and it fills a vacancy created by Dominic Panuccia.
Okay, I need a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Mauer. Any other discussion on Sarah? Okay, all in favor of this appointment? It passes 8-0. Going on to B, Spencer Wesley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I ask this council to approve the appointment of Spencer Wesley, Democrat of 243 Cottage Street, to the Zoning Board of Appeals as an alternate with a term ending August 22nd, 2022.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mauer. Discussion?
Spencer Wesley is eager to make a difference in the town that he's called home for the past 17 years. A graduate from the University of Connecticut, he currently serves as an information technology specialist in the 411th Civil Affairs and Psychological Operations Battalion in the United States Army Reserve. He most recently ran for town council and would like to contribute to the town of Monroe. Mr. Wesley is excited to get to work and be part of the town that he's grown to love and calls home.
Okay.
And this appointment fills a vacancy created by Sarah moving up.
Any other discussion on Spencer?
Madam Chairman?
Mm-hmm.
I'd just like to say, having gone through the election process side by side a little bit with Spencer, I got to know him both as a candidate and as a person. I think this is a great first step for him in his service to Monroe, and I'm sure he will do the town proud. So thank you for volunteering and coming on out.
I could tell Spencer, I started out on the Zoning Board of Appeals also, and now look at you. All right,
Okay.
all in favor of Spencer? Passes 8-0. C,
Excuse me, Madam
Carol.
Chairman,
Yep,
if you wouldn't mind, I believe Mr. Wesley's in the audience.
you can
The honor
sign
of
in.
swearing him in, so we can.
Sure.
You solemnly swear or sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that you will faithfully discharge according to law your duties to the best of your abilities, so help you God, upon penalty of perjury. Congratulations.
Okay, going on to C, Karen Wincoop. Mrs. Martin?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd ask this council to approve the appointment of Karen Wincook, Democrat of 35 Glen Hollow Drive, to the Board of Assessment Appeals as an alternate with a term ending December 31, 2020.
Do I hear a second? Second. Mr. Mauer? Discussion?
Karen Wincoop has been a realtor with Coldwell Banker Residential Real Estate for the last 15 years. This background gives her everyday experience with assessments. Even though she covers real estate transactions in the surrounding towns the focus of her business has been with the town of Monroe. Ms. Wincup's previous career was in sales and marketing for a major corporation for 30 years. This appointment fills a request from the first selectman seeking temporary alternates.
Any other discussion? All in favor of this appointment? Passes 8-0. D, Mary Hall.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd ask this council to approve the appointment of Mary Hall of 1418 Monroe Turnpike to the Economic Development Commission with the term ending January 31, 2021. Mary Hall has spent 34 years in various financial positions for GE, General Electric, and then another 11 years at Genpact, a spin-off of General Electric. For both companies, her leadership reach was not only in the United States, but also in Europe, Asia, and South America, which gave her experience in dealing with various cultures and ideas. During her career, she worked extensively as a leader to drive financial results, identify, plan, and implement growth opportunities, and oversee new operations for the overall benefit of the organization. She likes to achieve results through managing change and implementing new and innovative processes. After 5 years abroad as an expat in Europe, she was transferred to Fairfield, Connecticut, the headquarters of General Electric, in 2000. She assumed a leadership role in overseeing the financial progress of various business units. She and her husband moved to Monroe when she was transferred to Fairfield. Over the last 19 years, they've developed a strong bond to the town and have retired here. Mrs. Hall looks forward to working for the future betterment of the town of Monroe.
Okay.
This appointment fills a vacancy from Ashish Verma.
Any further discussion on Mary Hall? All in favor of this appointment? Passes 8-0. And now Mr. Reed.
Madam Chairman, Mrs. Hall is here.
Oh, fine, great. I don't know these people.
You solemnly and sincerely affirm or swear, as the case may be, that you will faithfully discharge according to law.
So I made you
the
read this
Economic
case.
Development Commission, to the best of your ability, so help you God, or confidently or you. Thank you. Congratulations.
I'll do it first. Okay, so we're on the action items. The only committee that met was L&A, and I know Mr. Reed will have a report. There's nothing, no other committee met because Mr. Lito appointed us, and it's been real hectic. So we'll be looking forward for the January 13th meeting. So going ahead to, we're doing the first selectman's update.
Okay, thank you,
Madam Chair's good.
Chair.
Whatever.
Madam Chair.
Hey, you.
Trying to get these documents out here. So passing on my written report, just a few updates for this evening. First is that, just to announce that our longtime Human Resources Director, Kathy Lombardi, has tendered her resignation in order to pursue an opportunity in another town. Kathy's been with us for 15 years. I certainly thank her for her long-term service and in her future endeavors. She'll be here until December 23rd. Second is some positive news that the Finance Department has been recognized for their excellence for the third year in a row. They've received an award from the Government Finance Officers Association for their work on the comprehensive annual financial report for the town. It is, as I said, the third year, and it's the highest award that organization issues, and is a testament to the strong leadership of Finance Director Banofsky and Deputy Director Heidi Mead.
Well deserved.
Sorry?
Well deserved.
Thank you, I agree.
Okay.
And last but not least, I passed these down, right? Last but not least, I had received this morning a request from the Board of Education regarding budget submission dates. I've sent down that request that I received this morning as well from Chair Donna Lane. They have asked, she has asked, that their budget submission that's required under the town charter be extended from January 9th to January 23rd. So I am therefore forwarding that request to this council, and because of the time being of the essence, would ask that this council ask that that item be added to your agenda this evening under new business so that you could consider and discuss it further. I've also asked that they have a representative here tonight, and I know Assistant Superintendent is here for that reason, so.
Okay, so I'll make the motion that we change the budget submission date for the Board of Education from January 9th to January 23rd. This is for the budget from the Board of Ed to the first selectman.
Madam Chair,
Yeah,
before we do that, I believe we need to move to add it to the agenda.
I thought I did that, because, well, no, I did Kevin's. Okay, so we'll make this, we'll make this one K, J?
K.
This one will be K? Well, I thought you were going to do K.
J is.
Okay, got it. Okay, so we'll make this one K. Thank you very much. Okay, so I have the motion. Do I have a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, we just had the discussion. Does Mr.
This
Costa?
is simply a motion to add it to the agenda.
Okay, so discussion? Does Mr. Cobbs have anything to say?
This,
It's just,
The motion to add.
this motion is just to add it to the agenda.
Okay, so now we want to go through the motion.
Well, we need to vote on adding it to the
Okay,
agenda.
got it. All right. All in favor of adding this to the agenda? Haven't done this in 4 years. Okay, so it passes 8-0. Any discussion, Mr. Cobbs? Anything?
would you,
I-
are you looking to take up this item now?
I might take it up now because he's here.
You have the purview to do that.
Yeah, I'm Chairman's purview. I'm doing it now because you're sitting here, the rest is,
Go back to the Board of Ed.
Yeah.
that's perfectly fine. So,
So,
go ahead, Mr. Selectman first.
so let me just, yeah, so,
Before we get to it, I believe, while Madam Chair was putting this to motion, there was not yet a second on,
I thought it was
I
was there?
seconded it.
There was.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
Yes, sir.
2 outs, 1 more. Yeah. Okay, so Mr. Cobbs?
Remember the first, yeah, I'm just here to, on behalf of the Board of Education, to request the budget submission to the Board of Ed, the first likely be moved back from the 9th to the 23rd. You know, generally, or historically, every year, we do we start our budget workshops the week we come back from Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was really late this year. In addition to that, then the first meeting that we had coming back from Thanksgiving, which was supposed to be the executive summary with some departmental budget presentations, was canceled due to snow that evening. Schools were closed. So we just did the first round of the executive summary, did the budget, did the departmental budgets last week. They are currently in the process right now. This is, as you guys, I'm sure you guys know, it's going to be a difficult budget year. They're hoping to have some extra time because they're literally going through line by line item at Massive right now. They were about 50 pages in to 250 pages and thousands of line items. So I know the extra time would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, any
Madam Chair, if I may.
further discussion?
so if the council wishes to entertain it this evening, I have, with the town attorney's assistants, drafted a resolution for you to consider. I would just, because of the timing, if this is not something you're thinking that is right for consideration this evening, I would simply caution you that your next regularly scheduled meeting would be after their submission date, so you would have to entertain a special meeting if you want to entertain it as a later date. So with that, I'd be happy to pass out a draft motion. It is worded specifically as the statutory authority requires some specific language in terms of reference to this statute, so I would ask that you adopt the resolution as presented, or if you'd like to discuss it further, I'm sure
Okay, you want
Attorney Lito would be happy to comment further on.
Okay, so the vice chair normally does the motion, so this will be your first one.
Alrighty. I'll introduce the following resolution to amend Chapter 8 of the Monroe Town Charter regarding a certain budget adoption date. Whereas pursuant to Public Act 18-12 and 7-191B of the Connecticut General Statutes, the Monroe Town Council, acting as legislative body within and for the town of Monroe, is authorized to amend the town charter for the sole purpose of modifying its budget adoption dates And whereas the Board of Education has requested a modification and extension of its budget submission date as set forth in Chapter 8, Section 2 of the Charter of the Town of Monroe. Now therefore be it resolved that Chapter 8, Chapter 2 of the Charter of the Town of Monroe is hereby amended as follows. Chapter 8, Finance and Taxation. Item 2, preliminary budget estimates. All departments, officers, agencies, boards, commissions, committees, and authorities shall submit to the Director of Finance and the First Selectman at such time and in such manner as the First Selectman prescribes, but not later than January 2nd of each year, an estimate of the proposed revenue and expenditures relating to their respective departments, offices, and public bodies for the fiscal year to commence the following July 1st. The Board of Education shall submit to the First Selectman and the Director of Finance its proposed budget date no later than January 23rd of each year.
Okay, thank you. So I need a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Formicella. Discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Mauer.
Mr. Selectman, when is the date that the budget is due to, on the town side, to council from the Selectman's office?
That is February, I want to say 8th or 9th.
In between the 23rd and that date, do you feel
Yes.
confident that the town will be able to
It's the 8th.
provide the budget to council still on time?
Absolutely. This simply delays their submission to my office. As you know, I have no purview over line items within the Board of Ed budget, so I don't think it would materially impact ability to proceed with the balance of the budget dates.
Also, is it the wish not only of the Board of Ed, but of this council, for this to be, as currently amended, this would make this a permanent change year after year? That's not to say that we can't make the same motion after this and put it back, we can, but as it stands, this would make it a permanent change. I'd like to know from the Board of Ed's perspective, is that the intent or the request that there permanently be an extension?
Yeah, I believe that was the intent as well. I mean, it's going to be helpful this year, it's helpful any year. We start, compared to other towns, our Board of Ed starts their budget really early. So I think, you always get much better, financial predictions the later you do the budget. So I'm sure they would appreciate that.
When this council contemplated the proposal that I presented last year regarding the submission date for the Board of
Correct.
Education, so it really wasn't up for consideration, and it really wasn't brought up at that time as an issue. I think this year it became highlighted because of some challenges they're having and meeting all the dates that they want to meet. And again, it was brought to me formally this morning by the chair to consider. So
That's all I have.
Okay, Mrs. Martin?
Mr. First Selectman, through you, may I ask the town attorney a
fine
question?
with me.
Okay. Mr. Leader, does this need a public hearing or anything because it's a charter change?
No, Ms. Martin, it does not. There is a specific statute, you may recall from last year, that a statute was authorized to specifically modify budget adoption dates based upon the
By
state's issues they
resolution.
had by resolution. So it's 7-191B allows the legislative authority to amend charters to modify budget adoption dates. So we did it last year. We didn't address last year was the Board of Education piece as a result of it being beyond that date. So as Attorney Mr. Mauer, also Attorney Mauer pointed out, it would be permanent. And so, yes.
And I do have copies of that statute, which I'm passing out right now.
Statute now. All right.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Leader.
so I think we've done everything. I think we're ready for a vote. So all in favor of this motion? Passes, anybody against? One against?
No.
Oh, okay, so eight, passes 8-0. Don't raise your hand again.
Captain Board of Education, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we're going on to unfinished business, A, Town Council Rules of Procedure and Policy Book. So as chair, I'm entertaining a motion to repeal the town council policy book, as this document is over 10 years old and no longer applicable.
So moved.
Okay, we've done that. Did we hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Formicelli. Discussion? Any discussion?
I wouldn't mind starting.
Okay. Anything,
If
Kevin?
that's okay, yeah, thank you. So this was presented to council last time. I think a lot of work was put in by Ms. Aguilar, Mr. Lito. I think it reflects, I know it's a changed version, but tonight would be, if we do pass this, there would be a clean version cut. We would be voting on the changes. Also, any section that was changed would have the current date on it, per how the structure and the template works. So that's what we would be voting on, and then we'll cut a clean version to be put into the
Okay.
town documents.
Any other discussion? Mr.
Question.
Mauer?
What was the exact motion?
To repeal the town council policy book, as this document is over 10 years old and no longer applicable.
Okay.
Okay? All in favor of this motion? Passes 8-0. Going on to the next one. Chair will entertain a motion to adopt the town council rules of procedure as revised and presented.
So moved.
Okay? Seconded by Mr. Reed. Discussion? Anything? So, all in favor? Oh, Mr. Mayor, sorry.
I do have some comments on the the changes to section 18, the rules of participation. Page 7 of 10.
Okay, page 15, 7 of 10. Okay, so,
Well, I don't have issues with the changes to the, to first public participation. Second public participation, I believe that changes need to be made, but the changes need to be made in the other direction. I see no reason why our public participation should be limited to unresolved issues. If somebody has an issue with something that is decided at council, they should be, as a member of the public, as the people we're representing, they should be welcome to state those issues and to tell us when they don't agree with the decision that's made. Just because it's no longer pending doesn't mean that something can't become pending later on. It doesn't mean that it can't change the minds of council to maybe decide to bring something that we've already decided on back up. I see no reason why second public participation should be limited to only unresolved items from that day's agenda. If somebody has something to say and takes the time to come out to our meeting and either misses first public participation or, like I said, has something to discuss based off of items that have happened on our agenda since first public participation and what was said, they should be able to do so.
so are you suggesting an amendment to this motion?
I would move to approve the rules of policy and procedure with the caveat that second public participation be changed to simply say anyone who desires to address the council during second public participation must adhere to the rules of public participation as aforesaid.
Any other discussion?
So we're opening up the second public participation for anything.
Correct. Would have the same rules as the first public participation.
And we're doing that under the guise that someone might be limited on how they would participate for that second public participation.
Correct.
Excuse me, Mr. Vice Chair. We do need a second on that motion.
Did we just get a
Or go
second?
forward to discussion.
Oh, I think I asked for a second. Okay, do I have a
We
second?
didn't- I don't
Yeah,
think
on
we
my
got
motion.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay, Mrs. Martin will second it. Okay, so all in favor of, go ahead.
Well, with regards to the second participation, I know it's a mechanism that's been in for, at least, I think 3 cycles, if I'm not
Probably
mistaken.
6 years.
I don't get the impression that the way the statute, or I should say, way it's set up now for a second public participation as we have it in place right now has limited or has caused anyone to, feel that they were, unfairly withheld from voicing their opinion. Also want to add that the second public participation that's in our agenda every week is one that is somewhat infrequently used as well. My concern with regards to open-ending, to use lack of a better term, would be to potentially lengthen the meeting with maybe some unrealized potential as far as what it's trying to accomplish. That's what I...
Okay, because let's do this, Mrs. Martin, then Mr. Mauer, and then we're going to call for a vote on the amended agenda.
I respectfully disagree with that opinion, and this is why. The original intent when the second public participation was brought forward was to have it open, that there were no restrictions on what someone could speak on. And I think to Mr. Mahler's point, sometimes things come up that people want us to know. As it's been discussed, there's not a lot of participation from the public at times. The meetings are difficult to attend, a lot of reasons. But there may be something that someone wants to bring to our attention, and they would like to do it publicly, and to suggest that listening to the public would be extending our evening. I'm not in favor of that. I think this is, open government. Let's see what people have to say.
Well, okay, so Mr. Mauer first, then you, Mr.
In addition to what Councilwoman Martin just stated, the public participation would still be limited in that it is limited as to the rules of first public participation, keeping comments to 3 minutes. The other issues that arise is just because we have been fairly lenient on this in the past, certain people to discuss, that does not mean that they shouldn't have the right to, and just because this hasn't come up frequent in the past does not mean that we should try to quiet our public in these meetings. Also, there is the aspect of items such as the action items where there's committee discussions, and more importantly, in my opinion, the first selectman's update. Should there be an update item from the first selectman that a member of the public wishes to comment on, they don't currently have the ability to do so in our meeting, and publicly, as public participation happens before those action items, in addition to our unfinished business and new business. The minutes that this could possibly extend our evenings, I think, are far exceeded in weight by the allowance of our public to have open access to their government officials and be able to speak their mind as to the issues to those elected officials.
Mr. O'Rourke?
I'm sorry, I think Jonathan was...
Oh,
Madam Chair, just a brief question and brief comment. First, how many other towns have a second public participation and adhere to that? Other towns mean for their chief legislative body. I'm unaware of any. Maybe someone has that information that says there's another one. And second, are there any other boards or commissions or committees in Monroe that adopted a second public participation? Again, I'm not aware of one, but if someone could inform me of that information.
I'm calling a 5-minute, Chairman's prerogative, I'm calling a 5-minute recess. I can do that. Let's go in our office.
To me, it seems like just a It's really too restrictive. I don't think so. It's kind of. I hear something said at the meeting and I want to make it. Sometimes you're probably going to less than
I have no idea what they could change. So Carrie's the exec.
There's three amendments in the agenda, there's JK.
Yeah, I didn't get the numbers, but
This should be
there's.
JK, the first one is Harris.
Second section
Executive session was.
was the second. First one was, oh, you.
That's why I forgot.
Yeah. As soon as I saw that there was a
Okay, we're back. So, what are we up to, discussion? Mr. Merrill, I think
Is it
Jason.
any more, is it
Any more discussion
No more discussion
On
on
yours.
this, right?
on yours? Okay, so, all in favor of the amended motion? All against the amended motion? So it goes down 5-3. And now we're on to the main motion, which is let's see, anybody want to discuss this is the first one I've done this in a while. So the main motion is there. Any discussion on the main motion? Mr. Mauer?
I think this council just made an error in judgment in deciding to vote against open discussion from our public to the council. I think that is a real shame. I don't think anybody in the prior discussion to the amendment to this raised any points outside of length of time to our meetings. And I think as civil servants who are meant to represent the town of Monroe and the people of the town of Monroe who elected us here, to not allow them to openly speak to this council is a true mistake, and I can tell you that, and by that I can't support this this amendment, and despite the fact that there are other items in there that I think should change, and that's council feels that the minutes of time is more important than letting the public speak openly to this council.
Okay, anybody else? Mr. Reed, I believe you're last. I don't see anybody else.
No one else.
Okay, so,
Ms. Aguilar.
oh, I'm sorry, Ms.
Thank you,
Aguilar?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Actually, I worked with Mr. Reed and Mr. Lito on all these changes, and we did discuss the second participation, and although I agree with how we decided to write it, hearing Mr. Mauer's points, we did have these points. They were brought forth by another person from the public, and honestly, I think it's really just trying to get people here to say that it will take a lot of time with the 2 to 3 people we get every week. I think it would just be good. I will be voting for this because we worked so hard for it, but I do wish we would change it to take out that part of
Okay,
the second
any other
participation.
discussion? Mr. Reed?
So, no, Ms. Aguilar, I appreciate your transparency there. There was a lot of discussion on this, a lot, actually. I think we, probably over 3 or 4 L&A sessions, we went over it. I think, Mr. Mauer, I'm not going to directly comment. I think it's a bit disingenuous to say this doesn't allow the public to speak. I mean, those were your exact words, so I'm just going on what you said. And there's an insinuation that we're trying to get minutes back. Did you ever ask for minutes back on this? Mr. Formicello, did you ever, did you? Was that what the purpose of this? Was that what the purpose of this was?
No.
Was that the purpose? Getting minutes back? Was that discussed in LA, that was getting minutes back? Yeah, that's never, ever been insinuated by anybody. We're more than happy to stay here till midnight. In fact, we do. We stay here till midnight with storms outside during budget season. So let's just make sure that's on the record. The second thing is that the purpose of this is to open up first public participation. And again, in regards to we're not allowing the public to speak, the public can speak on anything in the first public participation. In my mind, and I'll speak for myself, the second participation just limits it a bit to the unresolved business because we just voted on something, and there's kind of sometimes there needs to be a cool down period, and I'm certainly not saying the public is going to get inflamed over something, but it's good to just have a cool down period after a vote. The public can come in the next council meeting and voice any opinion they want in the first public participation. So no one is restricted at all in any way, shape, or form to any public participation except for unresolved business on the second. But they absolutely have their chance that night and any other night afterwards. By that point, the vote has happened. So if they want to come back in the second time, they absolutely can speak on that. So I just want to make sure that that's very clear. And that was the spirit and the intent behind this rule of procedure. Okay, is that?
Fine.
All right.
Mr. Morrow, one more comment, then we.
Certainly. While that may be the spirit and intent behind this, I still see no reason for restricting public participation in that second item. You mentioned that there needs to be a cool down period, and they are welcome to come back week to week, which is true, they are welcome to do so. The difference is we are elected to do so. We are elected to be here week after week. And if somebody takes the time out of their schedule to come on a specific day to discuss an issue that is on our agenda, or to discuss an issue that is just raised in the selectmen's report, or to raise an issue that is brought up in the appointments, or even whether it be positive or negative, to raise their support for somebody who was just appointed that night, and to give a congratulations to somebody who has just been appointed, to talk to an item that was just discussed in Parks and Rec and brought to the council's attention, but is not officially part of the business, and they want to do so because they happen to be here, they should be able to.
Okay, thank you.
One last comment. So they can.
No, they can't, under
They
second
absolutely
public
can.
participation.
None of the back and forth.
The purview by the chairman, in which we have never denied, I've been on council now, I think 6. The Monroe Sun can check that out. It's absolutely not a problem. On how long I've been on council, at the end of the day, we've never denied someone to speak, second participation.
Just
Ever.
because we
And
don't, doesn't mean that we
All right,
can't.
So
And the
if-
rules should allow as such.
Okay, we're going on to vote on this motion. All in favor of this motion? So what do I see? I see 4, 5 against the motion. So passes 6-2. Going on to B, project concept review, proposal from Save Our Stephanie Task Force for the Blue Trees of Stephanie project. Mr. Selectman has an update.
Yeah, a brief update that the Save Our Stephanie Task Force asked that I relate to, that they're still considering the feedback from the prior meeting, and they hope to have some communication back to this council in January.
Okay, so thank you for the update. We're going on to new business. A, resolution regarding the donation to the Edith Wheeler Memorial Library Children's Department from the Weller Foundation. Do I hear a motion? Mr. O'Rourke?
I will introduce the following resolution regarding the donation to the Edith Wheeler Memorial Library Children's Department from the Weller Foundation, to accept the donation of $2,000 from the Weller Foundation.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Aguilar. Okay, any discussion? It doesn't really need any. All in favor of this motion? Passes 8-0. B, resolution regarding donations to the food pantry and Project Warmth from Engineering Incorporated. Mr. O'Rourke?
I will introduce the following resolution regarding FFY 2019 State Homeland Security Grant Program Region 1 Memorandum of Agreement, and move for its adoption. Resolved that the Monroe Town Council may enter into with and deliver to the State of Connecticut Department of Energy Services and Public Protection, Division of Energy Management and Homeland Security, any and all documents which it deems to be necessary or appropriate pertaining to the FFY 2019 State Homeland Security Grant Program Region 1 Memorandum of Agreement, and further resolved that Kenneth M. Kellogg, as first selectman of the town of Monroe, is authorized and directed to execute and deliver any and all documents on behalf of the town of Monroe, and to do and perform all acts and things which he deems to be necessary or appropriate to carry out the terms of such documents, including but not limited to executing and delivering all agreements and documents contemplated by such documents. Thank you.
Okay, do I hear a second to that? Does need a
Madam
second?
Chairman,
Yes?
are we doing are we doing
you know, I just want-
multiples together?
You know, I wondered where B went.
My mistake.
Well, you read it, but then we went to C.
No, we read
No, we read.
Did we skip
passed-
A?
No,
We passed A.
did.
A
We
was
passed
8-0.
He read
Right.
B.
Read B and
just
then-
went
Madam
right
Chair,
to C.
if I may just suggest, you did resolve A, you could take item C up since you have the motion on the floor.
Yeah, and then we can go
and
back
you
to
can
B.
B.
Okay, I
My
wondered.
apologies.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr. Kellogg. Okay, so we're on
You need
to
a
C, so I need a
I'll
second.
second it.
Second by Mrs. Martin. Discussion?
Madam Chair, if I may, so this is a resolution, should be somewhat familiar to you. The language is one prescribed by the state. They look for a resolution of a very specific format. This is for a program that we've been involved in for several years, so this should be very familiar to all of you. We participate in a regional emergency planning team in the state's Region 1 preparedness area, which is basically we avail ourselves to regional assets and training programs that are provided through funding from federal Homeland Security dollars, which filter down through the state of Connecticut. They require this agreement to discuss how that is accomplished, in addition to the state assigning a fiduciary, which in this case is the city of Stamford, who has been a fiduciary in the past. And this memorandum of agreement is simply to allow us to continue under that program, as all of the towns in Region 1 have similar agreements that they must enter as well.
Okay, any other discussion? Otherwise, we can vote on this motion. All in favor?
Madam Chairman?
Yep,
Madam Chair, this was discussed in LNA and
Oh,
approved
sorry.
unanimously for consent to bring to the council.
thank you. Okay, all in favor of this motion? Passes 8-0. So let's just go back to B. Resolution regarding donations to the food pantry and Project Warmth from Engineering Incorporated. Mr. O'Rourke?
Ms. Aguilar, thank you for catching my error. My apologies to those generous parties donating to the town of Monroe. I will introduce the following resolution for food pantry and donation of $1,750 from Engineering and $1,500 for Project Warmth from Engineering. And move to accept these donations.
Okay, do I hear a second to this motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mauer. Discussion? Goes without saying how great these things are. All right, all in favor of this motion? Okay, 8-0. Going down to D, resolution regarding the agreement with Great America Financial Services Corporation for the leasing of recording equipment from BEI Holdings Incorporated. Mr. O'Rourke?
I will introduce the following resolution regarding the agreement with the Great America Financial Services Corporation for the recording equipment leases with BEI Holdings, Inc., and move for its adoption. Resolved that Kenneth M. Kellogg, the first selectman of the town of Monroe, is authorized to execute and deliver on behalf of the town of Monroe the agreement, addendum, and amendment, and any other associated documents by and between Great American Financial Services Corporation for the leasing of recording equipment with BEI Holdings, Inc. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Formicello. Discussion?
Madam Chair, so Chief Salvatore, who's with us tonight, can speak further on this matter, brought to my attention that there's a certain recording equipment that is at end of service life that we currently lease. We will need to replace that equipment as well as upgrade certain software. The chief has advised me that while the payments on this lease will not impact this until the following fiscal year. There's no impact this fiscal year. We can avail ourselves of some slight savings by entering into this agreement before the end of the calendar year. Although we do recognize that the cost of leasing is going up, we can achieve some savings by entering it before the end of the year. I'd be happy to yield the floor to Chief Salvatore if he wants to discuss this any further, or if you have any questions for him.
Any questions of the chief? Chief Salvatore, do you want to mention anything?
Well, I think the first selectman kind of summed it up, if there's any other particulars on it, fill in.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Aguilar.
Chief, the $6,000 differential, where is that coming out of from the budget, in the budget?
It's not budgeted yet. This will be for next fiscal year's budget.
Okay,
This,
even though we're
passing
signing
this
it?
tonight allows us to sign the agreement by the end of this calendar year, but the pricing won't increase until next
Okay,
fiscal year.
okay, okay,
And they'll
thank
start
you.
installing it after January 1st, and we'll probably get use of it for at least 5 months
Okay,
without any increase in cost.
okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And this matter was reviewed by special counsel, and as we discussed in LNA, they did make one change to the venue of law for us as requested.
Okay, any other discussion? Otherwise, we're voting on this motion. All in favor?
Matt?
This was also brought up in LNA.
Yeah, this is also brought up in LNA, Mr. Reed just said.
Consensus 3-0.
Okay, so 8-0. On to E, Mr. O'Rourke.
Okay, E. I will introduce the following resolution. Resolve that the resolution entitled Resolution Authorizing Appropriation of $1,650,000 for the town-wide emergency response radio system, a Board of Education radio system, and Phase 1 of the town-wide portable radio replacements, and authorizing the issuance of the town's general obligation bonds in the amount not to exceed $1,650,000 to finance the appropriation, a copy of which is attached here to, is hereby approved and recommended for your adoption by the town.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to waive the reading of the entitled resolution and that its full text be incorporated into the minutes of the meeting.
So moved.
So moved, and
Second.
second, thank you. Discussion?
Madam
Okay.
Chair, thank you. I have some copies of the presentation. You want to pass that down, and if I could just ask the clerk for any leftovers, once it gets to the end, if you could leave them out front for the public. Appreciate it. So, as you know, there's 4 resolutions on your agenda this evening. I'll talk generically, and then we can discuss the first one in more specifics. So, as I'm sure you're all well aware, this capital budget for the current fiscal year was included in the annual town budget that was passed in referendum in May. There are certain projects that are right to consider as they are ready to proceed, and we are simply going through the charter required process now to move those forward. I want to just, this obviously applies to all the projects this evening, but I'll mention it here. This is something that I'm sure, the Board of Finance pays a little bit more attention to, but I want to make sure you're aware as well that one of the things, as you know, we always seek to accomplish is maintaining stable average, 5-year rolling averages in terms of the amount of debt that we have outstanding. As you can see here, what we are planning on doing this evening, not even just this evening's bonding that's under consideration, but everything that would be considered this in the entire capital plan, if it were to be, if all that bonding were to be approved, we would still remain within an acceptable level of a 5-year rolling average as determined by the Board of Finance. So that's really just the purpose of this slide, is to show that while, and again, there's projected debt, if you went to the entire package of capital, which it's not uncommon for not all those projects to get through the entire process. It was about $5.5 million. Tonight, the total that you're considering is just over $3.6 million. So we are well within, what the Board of Finance is determined to be reasonable. So the first project that we're talking about in the resolution that you're considering currently is for our public safety and Board of Education radio systems. There are 3 primary components of this. First is the town-wide replacement of our emergency response radio system. The current system is, several components are at the end of its service life. As we heard in great detail during last year's capital budget meetings, I believe there was a joint meeting with this body and the Board of Finance. So we are seeking to replace that end-of-service type equipment. It involves consoles, the dispatch consoles in the Monroe Police Department, as well as equipment that are on several of the towers throughout town. The second component is security enhancements in the Board of Education radio system, which is a security enhancement to allow for not just an upgrade, a general upgrade to their current system, but allow for simulcast at all 5 schools, which does not currently exist, so that essentially communication over the radio could be done at the same time at all schools, which currently cannot occur over that radio system. And then it also provides for portable radios for all schools because their existing radios would not be compatible with the simulcast system. And the last phase is phase 1 of a townwide portable replacement program. So relating to the first piece of the puzzle, the portable radios that our emergency services and public works currently carry will continue to operate on the new system. However, once those units fail, they cannot be replaced. The vendor will not support them, so it necessitates a replacement. So what we're looking to do here is start a rolling replacement, because while those units will work, there's no immediate need to replace all of them, but we need to start a process where we have a steady supply of replacement radios coming in the queue, so that as those radios go out of service, we will have new ones to replace them. And then last is obviously the bonding issuance costs that finance includes in the overall package. That's it.
Okay, thank you. The chair will entertain a motion to, we did waive the reading, right? I got so
Yes,
involved in listening to this. Now I'll take notes. The chair will entertain a motion to adopt the resolution as introduced.
So moved.
So moved. Any discussion on this? I think we pretty much have had it. Anything from anybody else other than the second?
Second?
Okay.
Second.
Seconded? Okay,
By not me, because I made the
Yes.
motion.
okay. So, all right.
Thank you,
I need a second for the motion. Okay, discussion? All right, vote on the motion to adopt the resolution. So all in favor of this motion? Anybody against? Passes 8-0. On to F. Mr. O'Rourke.
Stand by a moment. I will introduce the following resolution. Resolve that the resolution entitled Resolution Authorizing an Appropriation of $720,000 for the town's 2019-2020 vehicle replacement plan and the purchase of trucks for DPW and authorizing the issuance of the town's general obligation bonds in the amount not to exceed $720,000 to finance the appropriation. Copy of which is attached hereto, is hereby approved and recommended for adoption by the town.
All right, I need a motion to waive the reading of the entitled resolution and that its full text be incorporated into the minutes of the meeting.
So moved.
So moved. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mauer. Discussion? We've done this, so,
So-
Dee Dee's the motion.
okay, all right. I thought this was-
So this item should be fairly straightforward. As you're well aware, we kind of an ongoing project to have a rolling replacement of our 6-wheel and 10-wheel dump trucks, replacing older equipment. So this, by having new vehicles, not only does it improve the safety and reliability, but it reduces breakdowns and allows us to maintain efficient and responsive operations during winter storm response. The second component, as we've done in the past, is our townwide vehicle replacement program. There's not as much in this category as in prior years because we're in fairly good shape. This does include 2 chief response vehicles for Monroe and Stepney Fire Department that were discussed during the capital budget meetings, as well as the replacement of the fire marshal's response vehicle, which is planned to be taken as an off-lease vehicle to save some funds. And last but not least, a replacement pickup truck for the Parks and Rec Department, which will have plowing capabilities, because as I know this council's aware, the Parks and Rec Department is responsible for the plowing of the town facilities.
Okay, any other discussion? So I would like to vote on the waiving of waiving on the reading. All in favor? Passes 8-0. Now I Want to entertain a motion to adopt the resolution as introduced.
So moved.
So moved, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Martin. Okay, discussion?
Mrs. Aguilar.
Okay, well, get a better voice. Okay, so I have the motion, I have a second discussion.
Just briefly, does it seem that our current plan for rolling is satisfactory in its process in the amounts as is? Are we getting the vehicles at the rate that we feel that we need to?
Yes, I think I'm certainly comfortable, Mr. Nowacki, if you want to elaborate, but I think we're executing the plan as desired.
Absolutely, Mr. Nowacki, Director of Public Works. Yes, we are, I am extremely happy, so thank you very much. I've been here and we've not been in this position. Parks and Rec has taken on responsibilities. Their equipment has increased appropriately for such, single wheels, now dual. We're going to be able to repurpose the existing pickup truck that's being replaced with some added activities, particularly around the roundabout. Our heavy equipment dump trucks, we're probably looking at 4 more cycles to get rid of. At that point, we would have our legacy vehicle would be about 15 years old. So we can pick and play as we run into issues with vehicles. But the rolling stock and the rolling replacement is extremely beneficial. It's very helpful and it keeps us in the ability to provide the services that we're asking.
Wonderful, thank you.
It's working well.
Okay, any other
Thank you.
discussion? So let us vote on the motion to adopt the resolution. All in favor? Anybody against? Passes 8-0. Going on to G, Mr. O'Rourke.
I will introduce the following resolution. Resolved that the resolution entitled Resolution Authorizing an Appropriation of $1,020,000 for road construction and reconstruction Phase 7 project and authorizing the issuance of the town's general obligation bonds in the amount not to exceed $1,020,000 to finance the appropriation, a copy of which is attached hereto, is hereby approved and recommended for the adoption by the town.
Okay, do I have a second for that?
Second.
Second, discussion? You want to do it now, Mrs. Selectman?
Did you want to entertain a motion to waive the reading first?
Yeah, well, either way. The chair will entertain a motion to waive the reading of the entitled resolution and that its full text be incorporated into the minutes of the meeting.
So moved.
Okay, second on that?
Second.
Okay, so all voting on that? Passes 8-0. Now a discussion, Mr. Selectman?
Thank you. So this should be fairly straightforward as well. This is very similar to prior years. This is the Phase 7, really just meaning the 7th iteration of our bonding project for road reconstruction. This is providing consistent appropriation to prior fiscal years. We'll continue to improve our overall pavement condition index, repaving and restoration of roads. I've indicated our kind of success in the current fiscal year. We have already far exceeded prior years, having done 7.46 miles, another 1.5 miles projected in the spring. This is the full amount that was considered and approved in the capital budget process.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, let's vote on this motion. All in favor of this motion? Passes 8-0. Okay, H, Mr. O'Rourke?
I will introduce the following resolution. Resolved that the resolution entitled Resolution Regarding an Appropriation and Bond Authorization of $215,000 for the purchase of fire equipment, a copy of which is attached hereto, is hereby approved and recommended for the adoption by the town.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. Second, we'll do discussion after. I make a motion to waive the reading of the entitled resolution, that its full text be incorporated into the minutes of the meeting. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, discussion, Mr. Selectman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the final one is, as you said, it's fire equipment for the Stevenson Fire Department. This is all around self-contained breathing apparatus to meet the current NFPA standard: bottles, masks, compressors. Basically, this is, again, what was discussed in the capital budget process and is ready to proceed. I know there's several members from the Stevenson Fire Department here if you have any additional questions in that regard. However, this is as we discussed during the budget process.
Okay, any other discussion? I need a motion to adopt the resolution as introduced.
Can we first vote on the waiving of the,
I thought I did that already.
we took the motion in second, but did not vote.
Okay, all right, you say so. All right, voting on the waiving of the reading, all in favor? Thought I did that.
Yeah, something too.
Yeah, I voted, did I do that? Okay, so,
Yes, it was moved and seconded.
we're gonna have to practice more. All right, voting on the waiving of the reading, we just did that, 8-0, okay. Now I need a motion to adopt the resolution as introduced.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, probably don't need any discussion. All right, voting on this, all in favor? Discussion?
Just briefly, I remember when this came up during the budget deliberation, and when the gentleman stood up and said the breathing apparatus was failing and out of date and everything, I think we were all rather, taken aback, and it's great to see that this will be addressed properly.
Agreed.
Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, all in favor of this motion? Passes 8-0. Next, I'm going to call for a town meeting to consider and act upon adopted resolutions authorizing for the issuance of bonds. Resolution authorizing an appropriation of $1,650,000 for a townwide emergency response radio system, a Board of Education radio system, and Phase 1 of the townwide portable radio replacements, and authorizing the issuance of the town's general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $1,650,000 to finance the appropriation. 2, resolution authorizing an appropriation of $720,000 for the town's 2019-2020 vehicle replacement plan and the purchase of trucks for DPW, and authorizing the issuance of the town's general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $720,000 to finance appropriation. 3, resolution authorizing appropriation of $1,020,000 for road construction and reconstruction Phase 7 project, and authorizing the issuance of the town's general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $1,020,000 to finance appropriation. 4, resolution regarding an appropriation and bond authorization of $215,000 for the purchase of fire equipment. I need a motion.
Madam Chair,
Yep.
if I may ask that you include in your motion the language provided by bond counsel relative to the,
I was going to do that second. Okay, so, and
the
then
first part of the motion.
the one on the January 13th.
Yes, I don't believe.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
did that.
I was going to do that. Okay, I'm entertaining a motion that contingent upon Board of Finance approval, the town meeting be warned and held on January 13th, 2019 at 7 p.m. in the Monroe Town Council chambers of the Monroe Town Hall to consider and act upon the following entitled bond resolutions individually, and that the town clerk cause legal notice of such meeting to be posted and published in accordance with the law. 1, resolution authorizing appropriation of $1,650,000 for a townwide emergency response radio system, a Board of Education radio system, and Phase 1 of the townwide portable radio replacements, and authorizing the issuance of the town's general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $1,650,000 to finance the appropriation. 2, resolution authorizing an appropriation of $720,000 for the town's 2019-2020 vehicle replacement plan and the purchase of trucks for DPW, and authorizing the issuance of the town's general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $720,000 to finance the appropriation. 3, resolution authorizing an appropriation of $1,020,000 for a road construction and reconstruction Phase 7 project, and authorizing the issuance of the town's general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $1,020,000 to finance the appropriation. 4, resolution regarding an appropriation and bond authorization of $215,000 for the purchase of fire equipment.
So moved.
So moved. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion, we've
Thank
pretty
you.
much done. Okay, voting on this motion, all in favor of this motion? Okay, thank you, it goes 8-0. Now we have Mr. Reed, it's been a rough night, and that's K. K is the, I have it here, the legal services agreement for town attorney.
That's J.
It's J.
Yes, we switched
Which is
around. Fine, okay.
Yep.
So I can read it, resolved that Kenneth M. Kellogg, First Selectman of the Town of Monroe, is authorized to execute and deliver on behalf of the Town of Monroe the legal services agreement and any associated documents by and between Francis Lido for the provision of legal services at the Town of Monroe. Do I hear a second to this?
Second.
Second. We have discussion.
So, as I mentioned earlier during L&A, as you're all well aware from my communication, that subsequent to Mr. Lido resigning from council, I have appointed him as town attorney. Consistent with that, I am presenting to this council for its approval the legal services agreement, which is essentially the same as prior agreements you've seen before you for similar services in the past, with the only difference being that in this case, Attorney Leo will be providing the services for the first year at no cost.
Okay. Any other discussion, Mr. Mauer?
I preface my statement here with a statement of support in general to Attorney Lido for this position. First, in a thanks to his service on this council, I've truly enjoyed serving with Frank, and I truly appreciate the professionalism with which he served this town, and I am certain that that professionalism would continue as town attorney. So from a personal standpoint and from a professional standpoint, it's very hard for me to oppose this. That being said, there is a charter provision that does not allow for any council member to serve in an office of profit, as it states within the charter, for a period of 1 year from the time wherein they served on the council. There was also a provision in the Code of Ethics preventing anybody from serving on a board and then taking a position that would require them to present before that board. To the credit of Attorney Lido as well as the selectmen, I think they've satisfied one of those steps, which was great, which was the ethics, and that there was a provision that said provision could be waived by the ethics committee if they were petitioned to do so, which happened and was granted. So that, in my opinion, has been satisfied. However, the charter provision, if I may, which is section 1 of chapter 2, stating that no member of the council shall be appointed to any office of profit under the government of said town during a term of office and for 1 year thereafter, unfortunately cannot be waived by this council or by any committee. In fact, by the rules of the charter, the only way that a provision would not have to be enforced is if it was found unenforceable by a court of law. I don't necessarily agree with this charter provision. I don't necessarily disagree that this is, don't necessarily agree that this is an enforceable section. It's just that we are unfortunately not the body who could waive that section. I appreciate Attorney Lido's commitment to work for 1 year without pay in an attempt to satisfy this provision. The issue from my reading is that it's not that he can't take pay for 1 year, it's that he can't be appointed to a position, to an office of profit. Because by the charter, this is a 2-year appointment, and the town attorney would be profiting within that 2-year appointment. This is by definition, in my readings, an office of profit, and therefore would be a violation of the town charter to appoint Frank as such. As I said at the beginning, I this is not something I take pleasure in pointing out, but we did swear an oath to uphold the charter, and from my view, this is a violation of the charter, I am in possession of the letter from our outside counsel, which talks about whether or not this is enforceable. And I don't, as I said, I don't necessarily disagree with his finding that it is not. The issue is that we are not the board to, by charter, we are not the board to decide whether or not this is enforceable, nor is this outside attorney. The only person who can do so by charter would be a court of law. And as such, I unfortunately don't think we can satisfy the charter in this appointment.
Any other discussion? Mrs. Martin?
Yeah, this opinion letter, were we to see that opinion letter?
I'd be happy, it was given on request to LNA, I'd be happy to pass it down to the rest of council members that have not received it.
As an aside, I have enough trouble with the legalese as it is, but to just get it to look at right now is interesting.
If I may, Madam Chair, while the council is reading, I'll just state for the record that I did, having the, recognizing that the charter provision existed and having the concern to ensure that there would not be any issues, I did request this independent opinion from special counsel from Cohen & Wolf, and the opinion that I received was that the charter provision is not supported by statute or by case law, and that in fact my appointment of Attorney Lito would be appropriate upon his resignation, and in fact that he could, and it could actually be compensated. However, Mr. Lito has offered to do this at no cost in the spirit of what the charter says, despite its lack of enforceability.
Okay, Mr. Formicelli?
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I have permission to ask the first selectman a question?
Madam Chairman, did I have the floor? I had a
Well,
question.
okay, because Mr. Selectman started. Well, okay, so if you still have the floor, fine.
I do. Mr. Kellogg, the consent letter, or the, what are we calling it?
I'm sorry?
The agreement letter
Agreement, yes?
that you just handed out to us. Is that what we're calling that?
What I just passed out was the opinion letter from
Okay,
special counsel.
the opinion letter.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, I stand corrected.
Mhm. No worries.
That's signed by whom? I
I'm
can't-
sorry?
That's signed by whom?
That is signed by Attorney Vincent Marino. I'm sorry, yeah, I noticed that there's,
Does it,
seems to be doubles, yeah, it looks like there's
They double,
It
they
is,
didn't
but it
put a
says-
space between
Yeah.
special
Yeah.
town attorney
Yep.
and Vincent Marino Esquire.
Yep,
That's
what it
both
says
of
on
those
the
things on the
letterhead.
same line,
Same line.
unfortunately.
The letterhead says Vincent M. Marino Esquire.
My guess is that the signature is a stamp and has the Vincent Marino Esquire as part of the stamp, and it's stamped over the special town attorney.
Anything else, Mrs. Martin?
it was electronic signature.
yeah, it was just difficult to read. That's
Okay.
Yep, I
not
understand.
a big deal.
Okay.
I had a couple, I want to go on record too that I think in theory that this is a great appointment. It's a great appointment because of skill and probably a great appointment just because of the work that Mr. Lito has done on the council. But I do have the same concerns that were raised by Mr. Mauer. This is not an appointment that we have to approve. This is the first selectman's appointment.
Correct.
We really don't have a dog in this hunt particularly, but we have the opinion letter, which is, I guess is like, it's never been challenged. I mean, how do we know? I appreciate this gentleman's research, but you know, how do we know kind of thing? And that's a concern to me. At the same time, thinking the dichotomy there is that I think this is a great appointment. but I'm concerned that because we don't have to approve it at all, that this is your appointment, and this is, on the surface anyway, the appearance, because it has never been challenged, a violation of the charter. And what kind of a precedent is that setting for us?
The legal opinion I have from Commonwealth is that it is not a violation of the charter.
And you are personally, and as first selectman, comfortable with making an appointment that, again, on the surface violates the charter via the legal opinion?
I would not make an appointment that violated the charter. I make an appointment that relies upon an opinion from my attorney, an independent attorney, that states that the appointment is proper.
Okay, I appreciate that, thank you.
Okay, and, Mr. Mauer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just with all due respect, Mr. First Selectman, I do disagree with your characterization. The letter says that it doesn't violate the charter, whereas my reading of the letter actually talks about the fact that the charter provision is not enforceable. And I think those are two different statements. And like I said, I don't necessarily disagree with the findings of the letter that this would be found unenforceable. The issue is that we as a council can't waive a portion of the part of the charter. That would have to be done within the courts of law, also by the terms of the charter.
Okay.
If I can say something. I would challenge your opinion, Mr. Mauer, on the unenforceable. First, it would have to be something that would need to be enforced. I'm reading this letter as this. The term office of profit, originated in 1701 in the English Act of Settlement to maintain the separation of powers between the branches of government and prevent conflicts of interest that may be caused by legislative branch members, simultaneously serving a legislator while also working a paid position for the executive branch. Since Attorney Lito intends to resign from his town council position, prior to being appointed town attorney, no conflict of interest would exist.
If I may respond,
No,
Madam
because
Chair.
I think we've had enough of this discussion. Mr. Formicelli, your last term?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to inquire with the First Selectman. It's my understanding of Attorney Marino has also had experience with other towns as their town attorney. Is that an accurate?
Yes, my understanding is that he serves several towns in that capacity, yes.
Okay. And so Attorney Marino has a great wealth of experience with town governance and the ability to perform the necessary research for a great law firm and provide this opinion to the First Selectman, and this opinion has been brought to us to disagree with Mr. Mauer's point that it only addresses whether or not this section of the town charter is in fact enforceable. I would echo the statement read by Councilmember Rooney. In fact, this letter does in fact reference the charter and why it would not be violated based upon the term office of origin, a term that is not defined in the charter. As to the other portions of this opinion letter, I give them great weight based upon the person who wrote this letter. This is a person of great legal skill and has been trusted in many communities to provide opinions like this.
Okay, all in favor?
Madam Chair, may I have a 30-second response?
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just pointing to the point raised on the Office of Profit Origination, I don't argue with that. The issue is that that tells you what the original intent was, where the our charter specifically not only utilizes the term Office of Profit, but then adds the caveat that it be for a term of 1 year. So while the 1 year is not part of the origin of that statement, our charter provides for a 1 year period, which is why I would feel this is in violation despite the origination of the word, the term.
31 seconds. Okay.
Madam Chairman?
Yep. You can have 15.
Okay. Mr. First Selectman, Mr. Kellogg, would it be appropriate, and would you be in agreement to give us some indication that the payments would not be deferred?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, I mean, the graciousness of Mr. Lito was that he would serve for 1 year unpaid. You would have the ability to defer those payments till that 1 year situation was passed.
I don't believe that's how the agreement reads. It says clearly that legal services shall be provided by the town attorney from December 11th, 2019 through December 10th, 2020 at a rate of $0 per hour, parenthetically without compensation.
Yep.
So there is no contemplation, nor would I entertain any deferral of billing.
Okay.
That's the assurance I want. And could, may I ask Mr.
Yes.
Lito a question? Can we have on the record, Frank, your assurance that the firm that you are currently employed with would not benefit from this 1 year of work that you would be doing?
Absolutely, it's a personal appointment, it has nothing to do with my firm, and I can confirm for the record, as an attorney that's sworn an oath, an ethical oath, it would be unethical for me to bill for services that would be contrary to my agreement, which is required by the rules of professional conduct, so it would be unethical for me to do so, and I wouldn't even think about doing so. So.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so let's vote on this agreement. All in favor of this motion? Yeah, well, this is legal services agreement. We did it.
I don't believe it's a vote.
Okay, we don't have to vote on this? Or we
Well,
just-
if I may
resolu-
ask
have a
for a
resolution on the floor.
clarification, Mr. Selectman, I believe the request is not as to the appointment, but for us to approve, as with all contracts, your ability to sign this contract with council approval. Is
You're
that?
correct.
We just haven't moved into it.
Okay, then, so I'll start from the beginning. Legal service agreement for town attorney. Resolved that Kenneth M. Kellogg, first selectman of the town of Monroe, is authorized to execute and deliver on behalf of the town of Monroe the legal services agreement and any associated documents by and between Francis Lito for the provision of legal services of the town of Monroe. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Reed. Discussion, I think we've had enough discussion. Okay, all in favor of this resolution? Okay, against this resolution? 3, so it's a 5-3 vote. Now we're going on to public participation.
Madam
Anybody?
Chair, I believe you added an executive session to your agenda.
And before we move
Okay.
on, Madam Chair, if I may briefly just state for the record, the nay vote on my part, as well as I believe on both of my counterparts, has absolutely nothing to do with Frank's qualifications. We are in full support of him in that sense. It is purely because of our view that it would violate the charter. And I think it's important to note that, not just for the record, but also for Frank, for Attorney Lito, that outside of that charter provision, we all agree that this is a perfect position for you.
Okay, so we voted on it 5-3. The last bit of business before public participation, Mr. Reed, we were going to do a motion on,
We motion, it's just an agenda item, we're break for executive session.
okay, so.
It is an agenda item at this point.
Okay,
I
so,
But it
would
could be
ask that
on
you
the
entertain a motion to enter an executive session for the
Okay.
purposes of discussing strategy with respect to pending litigation, and to invite the town attorney and the first selectman into the meeting.
okay, thank you very much. So we'll vote on that motion.
Someone needs to make that.
Someone needs to make the motion. I
So
don't think we
moved.
can so move.
I can just say so moved.
Can we so move again?
Yeah, we used to be able to. All right,
You can do that. Who's the second?
Second.
Thank you.
second by Mr. whoever over there. All right, so
All
we're
those in
going to
favor?
go in executive session.
All
Vote
those
to-
in favor, let's take a
Vote to
vote.
go into session?
Okay, vote to go into exec session. Passes 8-0. All righty? So the public has to go, but Mr. Lito
Someone
can
turn off the
stay.
recording, please.
You got it, Sean?
We're coming out at 9:48.
No, just me. Everybody else left.
Oh,
Okay.
no second participation. do I have a vote to, a motion to adjourn?
I don't know, not really.
A motion to adjourn?
What, the,
Just this, we came out of 9:48.
Carry on my legacy.
The executive session.
Yeah, come on, Jason, I can't.
I'm not in the seat.
Motion to adjourn.
What's that?
My job now. No, it's fine.
You just come out of executive session.
Jen does it.
Motion to adjourn. Jen's motioning, I'll second it. Or can I second? Kevin seconded it. Okay, have a good Christmas, everybody.
You can press stop now.
I think Sean and I are coming back.
Can I just ask if you